LCTR here, and there have been a few sizable, and I mean sizable, additions to Planetside 2 since we last checked it out. Not only has the third part of the campaign arrived, but we've also had some mountain-sized buildings in the shape of the new containment sites dumped down onto Esamir. So with new stuff to look at, let's review what's new in Planetside 2 in 2021. Just is it worth playing? The big news for me was the actual arrival of these new containment sites on Esamir. These colossal spikes jut up from the landscape like huge knife blades. From a distance, they look like an interesting design, certainly something new to the world of Planetside 2. It's only when you get up close that you appreciate their grand scale. Yet what you see above ground is actually mainly an indicator of the scale of what's also below the surface. Yes, containment sites' more open upper elements give way to a twisting intestinal interior. There's a real complexity and density to the subterranean parts of these buildings. Is there something of the biolab to these fights? Arguably it's reminiscent, and I'm not talking about that in a negative way at all, actually. There has been some salt about these new additions on the Planetside 2 Reddit, which will come as a surprise, I'm sure, to everyone. But some people will always be vocal about new things. It's a feeling that the community kind of wants something that's not too different, but also not too the same, because that's boring. A little bit of a tough tightrope there. It's worth pointing out that some of the layout is actually more complex than we're used to in this game. There are flanking routes to try and avoid to move past these natural choke areas. But of course, with it being new, there are a lot of players, myself included, that still don't have this place anywhere near memorized. I'd also say that all the buildings we have in the game up to now also went through some revisions. People might, for example, forget how open the windows and bases were originally. I'd be surprised if these containment sites didn't have some evolution to their makeup and layout as they mature in the game. I think there are improvements that could be made. The lines on the floor are a nice addition. I'd like to see some colour used to mark out the three main areas underground to help with readability. There are some natural choke points, but the broad statement of it's too easy to defend or it's too easy to capture feels pretty anecdotal at the moment. The sort of thing that devs will have a better view on via backend stats. Tougher to ask is the visual aliasing that seems more prevalent in these heavy interior creations. Again, like I mentioned for Sanctuary, it's a feeling of the engine being asked to do something it wasn't originally really designed for, not really for performance, that actually feels okay, or at least as good as the game feels when you have hundreds of players in a really small area. More that the aliasing on the sharp edges, that's the kind of ladder effect you can see, can make the place look a little harsh on the eyes. Planetside 2 doesn't have what you might describe as modern anti-aliasing techniques. It doesn't even have the older brute force techniques like MSAA. The best you can do is really force something like FXAA on via NVIDIA's control panel, or use their super resolution to massively over-render and then scale down the result. But even then, to be honest, I've not had much luck getting worthwhile image improvements. Overall, the new containment sites feel visually fresh, and the diversity of the layout means it genuinely brings new experiences to the game. I feel a little disappointed that the large vertical scope of the building isn't more explorable by players, but with what happened with Biolab performance beforehand, I do wonder if submerging these bases below ground helps keep those frame rates up. And just quick aside to say, if you are enjoying this video, please do tap that thumb up button. It helps me out with YouTube and discoverability and all stuff like that. If you tap that subscribe button as well, then I appreciate that too. Thank you so much. We've reviewed some of Planetside 2's campaign stuff before. Basically the game's implementation of an optional quest system intended for single players, but played in this multiplayer world. The scope of these campaign chapters has actually been refreshing in concept. We actually have more gameplay differences than, say, just adapting the mission system that we've had for ages. Things still feel pretty fetch questy. It's a little like an MMO feel when you go to point A, press the thing, go to point B, and so on. Of course, this is a multiplayer world, so things are somewhat complicated by other players not really wanting you to be there. The chapters are active over a few months, but complications mean that you might not be able to progress your campaign if the situation isn't ideal. A base might be in an active fight, so getting down into the bowels to access some console might be all but impossible. But the main problem I had, and one that I think hurts user experience of the campaign a significant amount, is simply when the required continents are locked. Much of this campaign is focused on the continent of Esamir, but so many times I logged in to find every server that I have a character on, and that's all of them apart from the Asian server, didn't have Esamir playable. It was honestly really quite frustrating. For a new or returning player, someone won over by the news of new things to go and see, and after downloading to be told, oh, sorry, you can't play that at the moment, and we don't know when you actually will, it's just so destructive when you're trying to keep people playing the game. Localizing new content to a single continent and then gating players' access to it, especially when they have no control over it, or perhaps even understand that as a new player, seems like something that really needs looking at going forward. The actual value of the campaign to players kind of depends on what kind of player you are. It's personal preference. Those looking for the more lavish, scripted or theatrical performance will be disappointed. Think of it as an MMO side quest to the main FPS action. It helps flesh out the world in a pleasing way. I do really hope that the devs feel like this was a worthwhile endeavor. There's certainly places to improve this inaugural campaign, and I'd like to see what things they've learned that can be adapted moving forward. I'd say that the limited time nature of the individual chapters is one area that initially felt a little off, but in the context of large-scope map changes like this new containment facility, you can see why it needed to be synced to that evolving lore side. For a new player starting now, it does feel like a shame that all that content can no longer be accessed. I wonder if there's a way to perhaps have catch-up events containing previous world states, maybe in the future. For those fortunate enough to be trying Planetside 2 out for the first time, will you find a game with more content and an active development than we've seen for a long time? The bewildering nature of the gameplay and how you engage with it is still something that in 2021 is best learned from other players. So looking for mentor squads or joining an outfit is still absolutely the best route into learning to get the best from this unique FPS title. There was talk of a new player experience before, something that honestly feels like it's been wanting since the game launched. And I do understand the absolutely titanic amount of work that something like that needs, and at the same time that's content that existing players aren't being furnished with. The core of what's good with PS2 is still here. The mayhem, the chaos, the scale, the spectacle are elevated once again by these new additions to the game. That seasoned vets don't know the containment sites like the back of their hands is to glimpse at the experience of playing the game again through a new player's eyes. So, is it worth playing? The progress that Planetside 2 has made in 2020 and 2021 is heartening for someone who's played the game even since before it launched. To see active development this far into its journey is just great to see. It does make reviewing Planetside 2 a little difficult though, as I have to see it as both a title that many people will have thousands of hours in, but also a new game for others looking to spend their time on something new. I am though happy to say that for both of those counts, seasoned vets and newbies, yes, Planetside 2 is still worth your time in 2021. That heart that the game has, the jovial banter between factions, the awe-inspiring scale is all still there, refreshed, and still a singular experience that Planetside 2 can deliver after 8.5 years. Like other titles, I'd really like to see Planetside 2 have some sort of development roadmap so that the community might know a little more about what the plans are for this beloved game. Its future does seem a little unknown. There have been some notable headline figures leave the project in the last while. We've also had a new community manager join the project recently. Hello to you, CM Mithril, which was really good to see. Daybreak was acquired by new owners at the end of last year, so there is hope that as far as Planetside 2 is concerned, it should be viewed as one of the more successful titles in Daybreak's stable, and I'd hope worthy of future investment and development. What did you think of Planetside 2? Are you a seasoned veteran? Have you never played before? What do you think of that new content? Are you just here for the purple spandex? Let me know all your powerful thoughts and feelings by leaving a comment below right now. Like always, I'll be reading every single one of them. If you did enjoy this video, please tap that subscribe button and enable notifications so you know when the next video is ready. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.